Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to our Rethinking program. It's great to see so many familiar names. For our new audience, Rethinking is a global thought leadership program developed by Thought Machine. Through Rethinking, we aim to bring to you a variety of topics facing the financial institutions today with the help of our subject matter experts, clients, and partners. I'm Robin Zhang, Director of Marketing at Thought Machine Americas, and I'm honored to be your moderator for today's session and joined by an amazing panel of thought leaders who are here to share with us their unique experience as well as knowledge. Before we start, I'd like to go through a few housekeeping matters. We will be taking questions throughout the webcast. Please use the Q&A window on your online dashboard, and we will do our very best to address your questions. In any event we ran out of time, we will follow up accordingly. And replay will be available online at our Rethinking website, thoughtmachine.net/rethinking. This is also the website you will find scheduled for the upcoming webcasts, as well as other interesting thought leadership assets. Finally, at the end of the webcast, there will be a very brief survey for us to gather feedback. Your thoughts are certainly very important for us as we continue to improve and bring to you thought-provoking contents in the future. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's panel. Doral Blitz, VP of Strategy and Business Development at Personalization, and Nick Holt, Senior Director of Solutions Engineering at Marqeta, and Brad Moraz, Senior Partnerships Manager at Thought Machine. Now, I'd like to just go around and ask each of the panelists to do a very brief self-introduction. Doral, can I start with you?
Please, yeah. Thank you, Robin. Thank you for inviting me. Hi, everybody. I'm Doral Blitz, VP Strategy and Business Development at Personalization, currently based in Tel Aviv. I'm with the company 4 years. Personalization is an 11-years-old growth fintech company, working all over the world and very closely with, of course, with Thought Machine. And thank you for inviting us today.
Thank you, Doral. Nick?
Hi, thank you, Robin, and hi, everyone. So I'm Nick Holt. I'm Director of Solutions Engineering for Marqeta in Europe. Marqeta is a modern card issuing platform. We've been around since 2010, and we operate around the world, starting in the US, moving across to Europe, and now live in Asia Pac as well. And it's really nice to be here.
Thank you, Nick. Brad?
Thanks, Robin, and great to be here with everyone. Brad Moraz, Senior Partnerships Manager for Thought Machine, where I work across the ecosystem of fintech partners to support building integrations and partnerships to enable our clients to launch Thought Machine. Previously, I was a consultant at Deloitte focusing on banking transformation in the consumer and institutional banking verticals. Really excited to be here.
Thank you, Nick, Doral, and Brad. It's certainly an honor to have you, and I'm very excited about our discussions today. Today's session, we will divide into four primarily sections. First, we were going to start defining real-time data in a context of banking. And then through case studies, we will talk about how some of the leading financial institutions are implementing real-time data to increase customer satisfaction and gain competitive advantage. And we will talk about also the challenges these companies encounter and what they are doing and how they're doing in addressing those challenges. And finally, we will end up on a more forward-looking note to share with you our panelists' view as far as where real-time data is heading and what are some of the potential future trends. So with that, we'd like to let's get started. What is real-time data? To help us set the stage, I thought it's good for us to really start with the fundamentals, defining real-time data. It has turned into more of a buzzword, but what is the right way to think about real-time data in terms of the context of banking? Is it all about speed and technology, just as what we understand from the high-tech companies like Uber's and Amazon? So I did a little bit of research on myself, and so I'm putting up two definitions I thought can be helpful to get a discussion started. The first one says, real-time data does not promise data within a certain number of microseconds. It just means that the data is not designed to be kept back from its eventual use after it is collected. The second one is from Gartner. Unlike a batch or time-sharing operating system, a real-time operating system provides services or control to independent, ongoing physical processes. It typically has interrupt capabilities and a priority scheduling management scheme. Now, Nick and Doral, I'd like to start with you because data is a very important enabler as well as an aspect of the products that your respective companies offer. So can I start with you to get your thoughts in terms of how you define real-time data? Nick, maybe I'll start with you first and then Doral.
Yeah, by all means. So I think real-time data, when you think about it from a banking perspective, is activity that happens inside of a bank that actually relates to a customer's daily life. So people are making transactions and they are moving money around through cards or any other network rail, for example. And historically, those transactions would be done on a batch process and settled at the end of the day or maybe the end of the next day. And it's very difficult for the customer to know what's going on. What real-time data is, or access to real-time data is allowed, is for banks to provide customers with an insight into their activity as it happens. And this is useful for the customers, but it's also useful for the banks, whether it's for monitoring risk or driving commercial propositions, whatever it might be. Understanding what your customer's doing in real time and providing them with that data in real time has allowed a range of products and services and verticals to spring up that just wouldn't have been possible in that legacy batch processing environment.
Yes, spot on, Nick. I completely agree. And I think that's exactly the change that we are finally seeing in the markets, in the business model of banks, moving from a very reactive approach into a smart, proactive, financial data-driven, real-time approach and becoming this, real-time cool friend, trusted advisor of their customers. I think all of us are seeing today that, the battleground in finance is really around the customer's financial data-driven engagement. In order for banks or any other financial institutions, or if you will, any other industry, to stay close to their customers and to better sell, better service, or efficiently do that, they need to get to know their customers and their financial behavior, if you will. And by doing that in real time, they can stay close and drive meaningful value to these customers, helping them to better understand their financial life, to stay on top of their financial life, and to improve their financial wellness. And even be able, as we are saying at Personetics, even doing that on behalf of their customers. And it's always related to this real-time data. And it's mostly financial transactional data or cards data, like Nick said, or open banking, open finance data, and the ability to access, analyze, and drive in almost real time a business impact towards these customers.
Thank you. Now, Brad, batch processing has always been a thing in banking. And now we're seeing real-time data is a reality thanks to technology advancements, which we actually delved into quite much in detail in the last mini-series of this webcast last year. But for today's purpose, can I ask you to help to refresh our knowledge and give us a crash course as to what happened, why banks and how banks can gain access to real-time data?
Absolutely. Historically, banks have operated in a way that has been dictated to them by the design of their core banking platform. Technology and operations were built around batch processing. And batch processing is still very much a thing that exists in banks today. These legacy systems or legacy cores trap data and only make it accessible through taxing calls or infrequent and untimely batch processing that's not designed to meet the end consumer's needs, whether that end consumer wants insights into transactions, recommendations, or just better understanding of their financial wellness and picture. Among the many integration patterns that have evolved over time, I'd like to focus on really two. The first one is RESTful APIs, and the second, streaming APIs. So the difference between the two, and just to provide a little bit of background, is RESTful APIs, they're built around this request-response paradigm, and it requires an action to be taken to create, to read, to update, or delete data. Alternatively, streaming APIs proliferate data throughout the organization and the architecture when that event occurs. And banks can utilize streaming platforms like Kafka to generate this real-time data. But this is often not possible with a legacy course architecture, where Thought Machine as a modern core utilizes Kafka to stream data out real-time through transaction updates, through account updates. It makes it possible to personalize customer interactions, customer insights, or manage and run bank operations in a real-time way. And this is really impactful because non-core applications can subscribe to these streamed events and receive and act on data as it's generated, and not wait for that moment to make a request at the end of the day or to run analytics when things might be out of sync or untimely and irrelevant for a customer.
Thank you. Now, we have a definition. We understand why, how it's become possible. So with that backdrop, I'd like to move to the next section. We talk about, in the December webcast, we also touch upon real-time data, and we talk about some of the high-level case studies, use cases, going from customer service to product innovation, to fraud detection, risk management, all of that. But for today's webcast, I like to focus and really stay on the topic of customer experience. So Doral and Nick, I'm going to start with you again. In our discussion last week, I was so impressed by some amazing stories that you have shared with us as to how your companies are already doing, helping banks and financial institutions leverage implementing real-time data to gain customer satisfaction and to gain competitive advantage. So, you know, Nick, I remember you talk about a case study about how you help banks, restaurant clients to implement on-demand delivery services. And Doral, you actually just touched upon a little bit earlier how you help a wealth management clients in terms of becoming a trusted advisor. But before I ask you, you both of you getting into case studies, use cases, I'd like to also ask if you can take also step back. Give us your view as to what constitutes a modern banking experience, and why do we say real-time data is important to modern banking experience? So Doral, if you don't mind, I'll start with you this time first.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Robin. Again, it's not specifically about banking. Think about any kind of industry, right? I mean, customers are not just expecting, they are demanding, you know, a proactive approach. Customers are demanding their ability to receive the right personalized service. And they are even demanding, as we keep saying at Personetics, that at some cases when they are dealing with their money, you know, they have desires, they have dreams, they have needs. They are not always thinking about savings or deposits or APRs. And I think that's the expectation or the social contract between banks and their customers, where customers wants to move maybe from a FOMO, fear of missing out, where they are, you know, having all this burden and they need to manage their financial life, into a JOMO, joy of missing out, where customers can sit back and relax. And I think in this social contract, the bank needs to be the one, you know, it can be a human being or, you know, a completely digital approach or hybrid model, that bank as an entity will be able to be there at the right time, real time, and be able to proactively, you know, advise, guide, and help customers with their financial life and even doing it for them. So real-time data is almost the fundamental, you know, any kind of approach when it comes to servicing, engaging, and it's a win-win. Customers are getting the right service at the right time, and even the right advice, the banks are able to efficiently better serve and sell their customers. And I think Nick also said that it's the ability also of banks to properly, finally, to manage the credit risk, which is the heart of banks today, and to get to know their customers, to update their backbones of their infrastructure, and to be the right future-proof business model that drives consistent engagement with customers.
Yeah, I think that's great, Darrell. And I mean, I've been around payments for quite a few years now, and I've kind of seen the evolution of payments and data. And if you think back to the first wave of challenger banks that kind of sat on top of application processing interfaces and allowing data to move in that real-time way, propositions came into the market that utilized that real-time data that, when you look back on it now, it wasn't necessarily useful. So, for example, you would be able to make a transaction and have your mobile app tell you where you'd made that transaction and pop a Google map to show you where you were, which was cool and very quickly became boring, and you just turned it off because it didn't actually deliver any value for you. So I think what's happened over the last few years is that people have figured out that access to the data has allowed a breadth of experiences and a breadth of use cases to be brought forward. And you're dead right, Darrell, it's not necessarily just banking. I mean, Uber's ability to pinpoint where you are and get a car to you wouldn't have been possible without access to real-time data via the mobile networks. So I think you see these experiences springing up and coming to life in many, many different sectors. But I think the most important thing and the common thread throughout all of those is it's products and services and features that are being delivered to make consumers' lives easier. I love that joy of missing out, Darrell. It's a great little illustration because people are busy. People don't have the time to sit and do these things. They want clever applications and clever products and services to make these decisions for them and to make their lives easier. And I think the applications that we're seeing and the different product features that we're seeing all over the world are genuinely helping people save time, save money, improve their experiences, and give them the chance to go and do things that are ultimately more fun than banking.
Yeah, I think, Nick, maybe this is a good time if you can share with us the example about the on-demand delivery services that you're working with banks for their restaurant clients.
Yeah. So we, as I've said, Marqeta is a modern card issuer, and we're fortunate enough to partner with a lot of on-demand delivery services all over the world. And in a lot of parts of the world, the use case for on-demand delivery services means that the driver has a card and they facilitate the transaction at the point of sale. It's different in different parts of the world, clearly. And so what we allow is the on-demand delivery service to take part in that transaction flow in real life. So the driver will get to the merchant, they will perform the transaction. And in real time, we include the on-demand delivery service in the authorization decision. They can not only check if the funds are available to make that transaction, but they can also check if where the driver's meant to be or if the driver's on shift. They can look and see if there's any vouchers or offers that are due to be applied for that customer in real time. And then they can just respond to us and we respond back to Visa or MasterCard to complete the transaction. And all that happens in real time. So it allows the consumer to have complete trust in the on-demand delivery service that the funds that they've just deposited are going to be used to buy the goods that they've requested. But it also gives our partner, the on-demand delivery service, a tremendous amount of satisfaction and comfort that they can mitigate and minimize their risk. They can verify that it is indeed a transaction that they want to authorize. So it's that extra layer of taking the real-time data, having somebody authorize a transaction in real time. Okay, so what? But it's when they do something with it that it then becomes interesting both for them and then also for the consumer as well.
Great. Doral, you have so many stories, so I'm going to turn it to you next.
Yeah, as a company, we are a global leader in financial data-driven personalization and customer engagement for financial services. We are actually currently active with over 80 banks in 30 markets all over the world, literally serving 1.5% of the world population. So we have a lot of examples of how we are helping banks to move into this new world of seamless, frictionless, proactive engagement with customers and drive a quick and significant business impact. Maybe one example is US Bank, one of the largest banks in the US. Actually, with Personetics, they just recently became the second best mobile banking application in the US. That's really, really impressive. And with Personetics, we've implemented a big different business models and capabilities that are really addressing customers' pain points. Every time a customer is logging in, they're getting, hundreds of these personalized financial data-driven insights, alerts, recommendations from different data sources. So card data, the checking accounts, the saving accounts, open banking, open finance. We are analyzing all this data. And yes, Robin, we are doing that in real time within the Personetics analytics engine. So integrating with different sources within the bank or outside of the bank, and able to provide this hyper-personalized, almost, private banking approach to each one of these customers at a scale. Now, it's really great because it's touching the customers with relevant, meaningful information, including a call to action. So not just telling customers, hey, something happening or something about to happen, but also what should be the right advice? What is the guidance? What a customer should do right now? And in some cases, even helping customers to set up goals or budgets or different programs. One of the great examples that we are doing with another bank, a digital bank, Ally Bank, one of the biggest ones, again, from Detroit, from the US, is the ability to even help customers to automatically save for the future. Now, that's a very unique proposition because it's involving real-time data and open banking data, and we are helping customers that don't need to set up goals or threshold or limits or anything like that, but just by connecting the additional even bank accounts from other places, we are able to identify with our analytical models safe to save money in real time, and we are able to move these variable amounts of money from different checking accounts into the Ally Bank higher yield, savings account. Again, completely seamless, completely frictionless. It's only 2 clicks for the customers, and we are helping customers to create, this amazing cushion, financial cushion, helping them to automatically save for the future. We are always looking out for the customers, cash flow with our models, so they will never get into overdraft. We can pause or stop. Our customers can put a limit if they want, and the ability to really help customers to improve this kind of, financial wellness. We are doing the same if it's cutting a debt or invest for the future, and everything is being done in real time. And like Nick said, exactly, this is moving from FOMO to JOMO. Customers sitting back and relax. The bank is helping them to automatically, save for the future and creating this amazing, wellness cushion.
That's great.
I'd just like to add one point on there, Darrell, if I may. So I think one of the interesting things, and it's very odd to talk about regulation as interesting, but I think this coming together of technology and regulation is creating some really interesting propositions. So open banking across Europe started as a regulatory framework. What we're finding is access to that set of data in real time is allowing services like Darrell's described there to spring up all over the world. Banks are allowing access to their customers' data now with the right permissions, of course. And so you can see the next wave of tech giants or whoever it might be moving into this space to utilize that data and to drive really interesting customer propositions.
Yeah, that's such a good point when you talk about, Nick, touch upon open banking. I'm going to save that for the next section because I want to get into the more future forward-looking section. But just from the examples what you have shared with me, I can relate personally. I'm struggling to help my teenager to understand how to save, right? Hopefully those real-time data tools, as especially the Raul talked about, will make my life easier a little bit later. So now I'm going to come to Brad. Brad, from the stories from Nick and Darrell, we know it's great to know that banks are doing it around the world. Financial institutions are implementing, real-time data and modernize. But I think, as you said, Brad, earlier, batch processing is not going away overnight. It's going to be there for a while. So during that transition period, I have a 2-part question for you. What happens when a real-time ledger meets a batch downstream system, and how can banks adopt latest streaming technology while moving away from batch processing at its own pace?
Yeah, absolutely, Robin. And the short answer is that banks that aspire to move away from batch processing and closer towards a streaming concept and paradigm require flexibility. Batch processing is not going away anytime soon. But nearly every bank pursuing a digital transformation strategy towards real-time data would have a data repository that would consume these events from the source system. Now, from this data repo, consuming processes could query and aggregate the data in the way that they'd want for the frequency and the processing type that they desire. So, example of how you would adopt a real-time platform while acknowledging that batch processing isn't going away anytime soon. One process is the Nacha file creation. So any individual that's requesting an ACH payment from their bank to another bank, an entry is going to be created into a payment file for Nacha, and that file is going to be sent on to the ultimate clearinghouse or the processor. Now, in a real-time environment, we know this has to be a file, but that same initiate transfer is going to be sent to a data store, and then from the data store, a utility or process can run on that store to create the file. This is an incremental step along the way to adopting more real-time data streaming. So if that process has to stay in a batch mode, then the bank themselves can think, okay, outside of this, where would I like to deliver real-time data? Would this be customer insights and analytics, or like Nick mentioned earlier, fraud? Thinking through the business objectives of modernizing your core, moving towards real-time streaming data is imperative, because you want a core with the flexibility that gives you the ability to innovate in place at your own pace. And Thought Machine's core definitely does that by streaming out account and transaction data for the bank to ultimately decide which processes stay in place and how they want to best use that real-time data. And I'll save some of my regulatory examples for later. That brief comment got me a little bit excited. I think there's some interesting use cases in risk and reg, specifically meeting regulatory requirements that I can touch on in a little bit, but glad that got brought up in a consumer-focused session. I love that.
Sounds good. Now, before I even move to the next section, since we're talking about the transitioning, there's still the old world and the new world going together. So I'm going to, before I move to the next section, I'm going to come back to Nick and Dorel again, just with a question. What's your general observation? You gave so many good case studies around the world. Are there differences in terms of the adoption, the speed of adoption of real-time data, or the speed of modernized by banks around the world, whether it's by type of banks, the size of the bank, or even geographies? Is there one segment you have noticed doing better or further ahead than the others? Just a general observation from your experience.
Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, I think there definitely is. To all the points that Brad's described there, the larger the bank, the more ingrained their legacy processing is. And I use the word legacy in its truest definition. I mean, it's not that technology is bad. It's just that technology has moved on. It was absolutely the right thing at that time. And so what you find is that banks that are either smaller, banks that have a different regulated status, maybe in Europe, not necessarily a banking license, but an e-money license, for example, they're able to move a lot quicker. They're able to adopt new technologies quicker. They're able to integrate to other people a lot quicker. So if you think about, I don't know, Thought Machine or Marqeta or any modern technology provider in the financial services industry, there's a proliferation of niche suppliers, all of which can be connected to and manage data from via API. And so smaller banks, newer banks, are able to build an ecosystem of best in class and therefore able to drive product development and evolution a lot quicker than a traditional large financial institution might do. And I think the battleground, if you like, is how do the large financial institutions react to that? They're in a very, very privileged position in that they have the trust. some large financial institutions have built a brand over 400 years, and that's a brand value that you just can't buy anywhere. So they have a tremendous amount of consumer trust, and yet people are still moving to find products and services outside of that traditional banking network. So this conflict or this friction that exists at the moment between technology driving consumer propositions and the trust being within the large financial institutions is creating a whole range of products for people to enjoy.
I would add something. In most of the cases, most of the banks are selling the same products at the same price, and the ability to really get closer to the customers and to be much more proactive in order to efficiently better sell and service the same products at the same price, it's becoming, as I said, the battleground. And because of that, real-time data and real-time action on top of this data, that's the fundamental approach for any bank at any market at any size. Now, there are different, there are absolutely different in different markets. We are definitely seeing from our perspective that the banks in Southeast Asia and like Personetics clients, DBS and UB and Standard Chartered or some of the banks in Japan or Australia are moving ahead with that for different reasons and cultural or, architectural or the leadership in these specific banks. Nick is right. It's really about the size, the culture. It's not about technology. Technology already solved everything. It's just about, the ability to move forward and to execute. But definitely, where we are seeing a much more competition between banks and challengers, between banks and other, industries, this is where we are seeing, a much more, processes moving forward. I also think that, and Nick mentioned that open banking / open finance, which is a true innovation in the financial services sector, is also helping to move a lot of those kind of technologies and thinkings towards a real-time data. And we are seeing that today in South Korea, we are seeing that in India, we are seeing that in Brazil, as an example, not necessarily, unfortunately, in North America right now. So definitely, I would say Southeast Asia, it's definitely where we are seeing competition. Yes, size matters, definitely. I think that digital banks are really putting a lot of pressure on that. And of course, using great technologies like a Thought Machine are really able to speed things up and creating the right market standard. And as you know, you guys know that at the best, there is a network effect once you are creating a market standard in the infrastructure and the capabilities. And it's really moving west, if you will, into Europe and then moving into North America and so on and so forth.
I feel we can stay on this topic forever. There's just going to be so many things, stories we want to hear. But in the interest of time, I'm going to move to the next section. In this next section, I like to touch upon the challenges. And as banks modernize, I'd like to really, for our audience, also to get a view from the other side of the coin. As banks modernize and gain access to real-time data, what kind of challenges have they been encountering? How are they doing? And what are they doing to address those challenges? And I'd like to touch upon these from the perspectives of people, process, and technology. People-wise, we hear so much about talent challenges, especially when it comes to technology resources in banking. Obviously, real-time data will require new skill sets. We can talk about upskilling existing resources, acquiring new talents, or outsourcing. And from process-wise, there's also the change management aspect, like new governance, new workflows. So Nick and Doral, I'm going to start with you again, more on the business side, right? And then Brad, I'm going to come to you next, also get your technology perspective as well. So maybe Nick, can you go next?
Yeah, by all means. So we've had the good fortune to speak to a number of large financial institutions around the world about their transformation projects and how it might affect the people that work in their organizations. And there is a certain amount of nervousness from the people that have to work with this technology on a daily basis. Very natural questions like, how will my job change? How will the thing that I do every day look different? And so there's work to do to kind of to demystify the impact of real-time data on a bank or on a large financial institution. It doesn't have to change everything overnight. The operational processes that people are used to, they can remain, the systems that they log into, the work that they do, the reports that they produce. It's just that the data that they're relying on in order to do that thing becomes more and more clear and more accurate. And then over time, efficiencies come in and different ways of working will come in. But I think overcoming the barrier to change, I think is a fundamental requirement of any transformational project within any organization, but within a large financial institution in particular, because you have to kind of bring your team on board with you. You can't just impose change on people. It's likely to be reacted to badly. The other thing is making it sympathetic to the rest of the organization from a kind of a product and cultural perspective. I was given a great example by a large financial institution who tried to launch a greenfield bank completely independently to the main brand, and then tried to consume it back into the main organization. And they described it as organ rejection. And so ultimately, the greenfield bank kind of withered and died because it wasn't fit for the culture of the organization. So these things have to be done incredibly sympathetically. And you do that with transparent communication, and you do it by clearly explaining the benefits not only to the organization, but to the individual people. And then just lastly, and I know Brad's going to touch on the technology, but just on the skill set, I think organizations like Marqeta and Thought Machine and others in this space have done is again, demystify the complexity of payments and banking. You don't need to understand EMVCo or ISO formats in order to build into a platform like Thought Machine. You need to understand how APIs work. And that means that your talent pool is much bigger, and you can call on people with a range of experiences and not just payments or banking. And therefore, you're able to permeate those new and evolutionary ideas because you're pulling from different resources. So I see it as much of a challenge. It's a huge opportunity as well.
Great. Doral?
Spot on, Nick. So we are working in a people business, not in a technology business, right? I mean, technology already solved everything. And I just want to echo Nick. It's all about culture and and decision and the execution of that. And these are the biggest challenges to find the right people to work with, to design a specific long-term, not short-term strategy, to execute upon that, and to make sure that everybody have the right northern star and following that, and able to see the success of that. And so, yeah, it's definitely there. It's not regulation. It's not technology. It's not legal issues. It's I think all of that globally or regionally has been solved. So, yeah, I agree.
Thank you. Now, Brad, Nick kind of touched upon a little bit of that. From a technology perspective, right, you talk about this is a reality, the modern core of that. How big of a heavy lifting is it to implement real-time data? Are we talking about easy hookup with API, or are we talking about the requirement of retooling the entire technology stack or even the talent pool? Maybe you can delve a little bit deeper on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the good news is it has never been easier to take on something like this. And I say that because the documentation, the support, the openness of everyone on this call's products is phenomenal. We talked a little bit about the talent pool and having empathy for the change for the bank stakeholders that are going through this. Open documentation over the last several years has gotten so much better to allow self-service and just general inquiry for the curious person that you're going to hire. And working in open, defined sandbox environments to test concepts and test theories is a broad shift from working in a black box product that's closed off, that requires you to use certain modules that are included in their product. So to bring it back from a transformation and tech ops perspective, a digital transformation strategy is absolutely critical. Talent is a huge pillar of this. By using modern technology, you're going to attract better talent. You're going to be more appealing for people to want to come work for you. But part of that strategy really needs to be where you want to start using real-time data. You need to be able to use it at the right time, in the right place, and for the right reason. And without this intent, your strategy is likely not going to yield the right results, or you could potentially start too big and that initial change may be too overwhelming, like that organ rejection that was mentioned before. So we really like to think the best way to start this journey is to start small. It's incredibly encouraging how much you can test and validate and learn by kicking off a lightweight POC with various partners to prove out either a new product or a new type of customer interaction. So beyond this, if you wanted to start at customer insights as a channel to meet customers where they are and help them along their financial journey, is surely a great place to start. And within the bank, if you wanted to reduce the incidence of fraud and use some of those real-time authorization controls that Nick mentioned, that's another great possibility. But regardless of this ambition, these individuals in the talent pool that you're going after should be very familiar with principles of event-based architecture, event streaming platforms like Kafka, data transformation, and data modeling that will be stored in downstream systems. So this innovative nature and modern concepts and technologies will really help you become a magnet for talent once you have that strategy defined.
It's incredibly encouraging. I'm hearing all the great stories. Technology is there, and many of the leading financial institutions are doing already to modernize and taking actions and put real-time data to practice. But I think it's also fair to say that where the banks are barely scratching the surface, the potential of real-time data is enormous. So with the remaining time left, I'd like to go around and ask each of you to take out your crystal ball and give us your boldest prediction in terms of where real-time data is heading to. I know the session is recorded, but I promise we won't hold you accountable because I like you to be bold and to really give us your forward-looking view where you think real-time data is going to continue to the banking industry and continue to bring modern customer experience to a new level. So with that, Doral, can I start with you first?
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's a great question, and I think we are seeing such a great opportunities rising up from open banking, open finance, open economy, right? And I think that real-time data will become, as I said, the most important infrastructure around that. And it comes from not just my banking data or my retirement accounts or my mortgages accounts. It will come with my personal devices data or healthcare data or lifestyle data, utilities, social data, IoT data, travel data, and all of that. The combination of all of that and the ability to streamline, access, analyze, provide real-time analysis, and providing meaningful interactions and helping me to better manage my life. And as I said, joy of missing out. I think that's where we are seeing real-time data in a complete, seamless, frictionless environment where I don't need to carry the burden of so many tasks and chores and letting the technology do it for me.
Nick, what about you?
I'll take a slightly different tack. So I think in the future, it's going to be even more about the consumer. I think the consumer is going to drive their own behavior. I think one of the most interesting things that's happening in financial services in the last 5 years is Apple's acquisition of Credit Kudos. That gives them a direct access to open banking. And because it's regulated, because of the way the rules are written, that data transfer is not reciprocal. Apple can see all of your financial data, and yet the banks can't see your Apple data. And so what they do with that and how they build products and services that may even contain even more consumers within their ecosystem, which is ultimately their aim, is going to mean that more and more products and services are going to be delivered by single organizations that already have access to your data. I think having data as a commodity, your personal data as a commodity, and being able to identify yourself across multiple platforms and multiple environments will eventually put the power back into the consumer's hands. But I think the move of these tech giants onto that regulated environment now, and like I say, the rules are written to allow this to happen. It's not like nobody's doing anything wrong here. This was the whole intention of it. So I think that the large tech giants moving into this space is going to force, is not only going to drive a lot of product innovation and consumer benefit, but it's going to mean that large financial institutions and even smaller financial institutions are going to have to react very, very quickly in order to stay relevant and to maintain their proposition to their consumers.
Talk about those large techs, like Nick. Do you think, are there some lessons the banks should learn from them? They're obviously ahead.
Well, I think the interesting thing historically is that the tech giants have, and every one of them has tried it, has tried to move into banking and payments in some way. I mean, Apple Pay works, Google Pay works really, really well. People use it wherever they can, but it's still underpinned by a bank account, right? It's still underpinned by somewhere where your salary goes in and your mortgage gets paid out of. And no tech giant has been able to crack that yet. And that's because it is so heavily regulated. And, you know, in the US, it's prohibitively difficult to get a banking license, and that's true all over the world. And even with the relevant regulated status, you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the processes in place to mitigate against risk and so on and so forth. But I think utilizing regulation, allowing any technology company, large or small, access into that banking environment closes that gap. And so I think where you've seen, I don't know, Facebook marketplace payments fail in the past, or whichever, pick one, it doesn't matter. Every tech giant has made a play into payments somewhere in the world, and it's not necessarily set the world on fire. But I think the opening of this from a regulated point of view, like I say, the rules are written to make sure this kind of thing can happen. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how they develop products and services. The challenge they're going to have, the point I made before, is that the banks are some of the most trusted brands in the world. If you perform customer research on where consumers see they have trust, they believe in Apple, they believe in Google, they believe in Facebook and eBay and whoever it might be. But when something goes wrong, they expect the bank to sort it out.
That's a very interesting, yes, I think you're right. Now, Brad, I know you have a lot of thoughts there.
Yeah, it's tough to cover this last, so I'll try and combine what I'm hearing from everyone in a pretty good take. But I think whether it's a bank or a fintech, the group that's going to do this the best is going to deliver three things. They're going to deliver a value proposition that is focused on proximity, proactivity, and protection. So proximity. Why do I have to wait for my institution to tell me that I'm approaching my budget? When I order a delivery, that food tells me, the app's going to let me know when it's close to me and when I need to go walk outside and go pick this up. My financial experience should be the same exact way, enabled by real-time alerts or human-centered custom communications. Just some personality that lets me know it knows my goals and it's helping me get there. So meet me where I am, proximity, right? Proactivity, same exact things along those lines. What's possible with modern card platforms and card controls is only going to advance that previous point. It's going to result in a all-around better consumer experience and better ability to tailor propositions for what consumers are looking for and how they expect to use their products. And the last one is exactly what Nick just mentioned, trust. But I was thinking about it as, protection. Table stakes is the institution has to keep my money. But from a regulatory perspective, they are going to continue to have lots of inquiry, changing requirements, and they require a lot of agile platforms and reporting engines to adhere to protecting consumers' interests. And I think a modern core like Thought Machine that gives you the ability to report liquidity real time or manage your business in real time and not wait for potentially a file to be created or a process to run is going to provide the agility that these institutions need to compete in the future on customer experience.
Thanks, Brad. I have an audience question. Maybe, Brad, I'll start with you, and Doral and Nick, feel free to jump in as well. Here's a question. I have seen blockchain applications improve real-time access with streaming APIs. Do you see that continue to drive the Bank 4.0 or the future of banking/fintech and eliminate legacy, or shall we be moving into a new direction?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think I'll come at it from, not necessarily the merits of the technology, but rather how banks are incrementally improving access to assets or inclusion of the technology itself. So you see a lot of institutions providing on-ramps to cryptocurrency, either custodial servicing for holding or the ability to purchase with fiat into crypto. That is a really, really promising first step. And you've seen non-banks or fintechs take the other side of the coin by entirely catering their entire proposition around this. In terms of the speed of the data and the access, it'll be one of the things that's kind of born out of how things evolve over time. But I think a promising first step that's in line with our discussion here are some of those on-ramps and large institutions offering delegated custody access for crypto assets in a traditional banking context, be it real time or in another means.
Nick and Dora, do you have anything to add in terms of this question?
I like Brad's point there that it's not necessarily the underlying technology, but it's more about what it can do. I mean, blockchain or Web3 or whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's about how that improves people's lives, whether that's in an organization or consumers' lives. And so I think, the point that Brad made on crypto, there are so many use cases for cryptocurrencies now that just wouldn't have existed 3 or 5 years ago. My kids describe use cases for crypto, and I don't know what they're talking about, and I've been a payments nerd for 20 years. But if you think about how crypto is the majority currency in gaming, for example, there's an entire industry there, a multi-billion-dollar global industry that is predicated entirely on a technology that didn't exist 10 years ago. And so how these applications are utilized is the interesting piece, not necessarily what the underlying technology is.
Since we don't have any more questions from the audience, I'm going to go around and ask each audience to offer your parting words, your advice, whatever comes to mind when it comes to banking modernization as well as real-time data. Doral, can I start with you?
Yeah, it's really all about a very clear and defined strategy of, and any leader within a bank needs to ask himself maybe 2 questions. Who are my clients and how I'm going to, to monetize my relationship with them? How I'm going to make my clients, satisfied? How I'm going to efficiently better sell and service my clients? How I'm going to deliver my products and services at the most efficient way and at a scale. And I think if you're able to answer these kind of questions, the relationship model, the monetization model, and then to execute a long-term strategy, that would be a great start for for a much better banking relationship and capabilities to support that.
Brad, I'm not going to make you to be the last, so I'll come to you next then.
All right. So I like the point that was made earlier about demystifying where you start on this journey. And it's so encouraging to know that you can start this journey right now based on a best-in-breed ecosystem approach and proving out a POC and spinning up a few instances and having an exploratory call with anyone on this webcast has never been easier. And from there, craft where you want to go. It doesn't have to be a complete migration of your existing customer base or something of a similar scale. It can be as simple as a progressive migration or launching an out-of-footprint product. So there are many ways to get started. I don't want it to seem as complex as it might come off as, but the call to action for me would really be, where do you want to start? how can that benefit the customers and how can we help?
All right, Nick, now can I ask you to bring it home for us?
Yeah, yeah, of course, no worries. Thank you. I just want to kind of expand on Brad's point a little bit there. So I think whenever you do anything transformational in life, but in particular within banking, it's daunting, it's scary, and especially when you've got a spaghetti nest of connectivity that you need to try and unpick. You don't have to do everything. Because of the technology, you've got specialists in the ecosystem that can do that thing for you. It might be cards, for example, but it might be something else. It might be KYC, it might be a ledger. There's a number of different things that you need in order to run your banking stack, and you don't have to do everything at once. So you can utilize a combination of things that you've built that are really good. You can partner with best-in-class providers. And I think the last, just to kind of echo Brad's point, the last parting comments is just don't be scared. You can do this stuff.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Doral, and thank you, Brad, for taking time out of your busy schedule and share your experience and knowledge with us. I certainly enjoy it. And thank your audience for joining us today, and hope you find it informative, and we'll see you again. Replay again for today's session will be available on the Rethinking website. And finally, we'd very much appreciate if you can stay on for 5 seconds for a very brief survey so we can gather feedback. Now, bye now, and see you again.